you doing? Anthony Ferraro here of Create Sci-Fi. This week we're going to do another prop costume build. In a previous video, I made this Sci-Fi Trooper helmet, and I was really happy with the way this came out. Basically, with these builds, what I do is I gather some raw materials from the dollar store or the thrift store, and I just sort of freestyle it, and this is what came out. And I really, really like this, so I thought I should just go ahead and make the whole costume. So this week is the Trooper costume. And I incorporated the Sci-Fi Kilt, which I talk about in another video. This is basically just craft foam. It's very light, glued onto a shirt, and I also made a pair of pants. So this is pretty straightforward. And as you can see on camera, it looks pretty cool. So let's take a look at how I built this. All right, first thing, I'm just gonna lay out the core pieces that I bought. It's this pants and the shirt and these shoes. I spent about 30 bucks on those. So here, I'm going to lay down some duct tape so I can make the patterns for my foam armor pieces. I just basically sketch out the pieces. I do the arm, and I'm just doing a rough outline. I'm gonna clean it up later. So now I take the pants, I do the same thing, rinse, repeat, and I'm just basically seeing what goes with the flow of the pants that I bought. So I add those little corner pieces. And for the shoes, it's very simple. I'm just gonna do a tongue piece, because usually you don't notice them, but it's good to have something there. So now I take the tape off of the fabric and I lay it out on craft paper, and now I'm going to make my patterns. So what I do here is I clean up the lines. I make sure that everything is straight now that I have my dimensions. And you just want to mark everything so you don't get lost, you know, top, bottom, right, left. And I cut out my patterns, and then what I do here is I fold it over to keep everything symmetrical and cut out my notches and any detail pieces. So this way I have a nice uniformed pattern. So now I have all my pattern pieces. Now most of these are just one side, because we're going to flip them over and make the other side. So now I lay everything out on the foam, nice and tight with some pins like I learned from Evil Ted. And I just sketch out the pattern pieces. And now I'm going to fine cut out all my final pieces. So now I cut the rest of them, and here now I have my stack of armor. These are all the pieces. Now before I go on to working with those, I'm going to dye the pants and the shirt so that everything is a black uniform color. Okay, so now I lay out my foam pieces, and the main embellishment I'm going to do is this rivet look. And what you do is you just take the sanding drum on your Dremel and you just lightly press it into the foam dead on. And you get this nice rivet look. So that's gonna be the main pattern. So here I'm going to create a template so I can evenly space out some dots to mark where I'm gonna put that rivet look. I'm gonna be doing a lot of these, so this template comes in handy. So now I carefully add these rivets to my armor pieces. And that looks good, so I know I can start the assembly line. So now I just start banging these out. And the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add one more detail. I'm going to draw some lines on here with a Sharpie, and I'm going to take the wood burning tool, and I'm just going to make these lines that are just going to add just a little bit more detail. And then after that, I'm going to add some battle damage. Actually, I'm going to really heavily damage this. So I just roughly scratch in some patterns and some bullet hits and dings, and that looks good. So now I'm going to create the kilt armor. And I actually did a whole video on this that I'll link to right up here in the corner. So I just mark out all these pieces, and I cut out just a very fine gap in between each one so that these will hang. And now I'm doing the scarring and the battle damage. And I also, off camera, make sure to line these up. There's 4 of these panels, so I make sure that all the damage goes in the same direction. So now I'm going to seal everything in with a heat gun. And here's my final pieces that are all sealed with the heat. And I'm going to add some Plastidip primer to this first to seal everything in, because the foam won't accept paint. You want to do the Plastidip first. And I'm going to give it a base coat of this dark cherry car color. All right, so here's the finished pieces. Now I'm going to do a Very light gold brushing on these. First, I'm going to paint all the rivets, again, assembly line. You kind of get in a rhythm of this, rinse, repeat. And then I do the edges. I do these grooves, I get some gold paint in there. And again, this is going to be a very dirty, grubby, beat up piece, so I'm not too worried about it getting it perfectly because everything's going to get blended together in the end. So I just rub these into the crevices, and now I'm just going to do a very light dry brush on the edges of these just to give it that metallic beat up look. And again, I'm going to be going heavy with the wash after this, so I know that I don't have to be too dead on with these gold highlights. So now that I have my final paint job, I'm going to seal this all in with a clear coat. All right, so now we gotta glue this all down. E6000, I love this stuff. I used to think that gluing this would be too good to be true, but I put some of this on a costume with an actress once, and she just went crazy rolling around in the dirt, and that piece that I glued onto the fabric did not budge. So I'm very confident using this to build a whole costume. So now I just apply glue to the pieces and I put together my puzzle. You just want to make sure that you get it on in the right place. And now I have my final layout, and I'm going to set this overnight with some weight on it. That way it'll really soak into the fabric. And now for the weathering, just a little bit of black and brown acrylic. I use mostly black with a touch of brown and a lot of water. So now I'm just gonna slop this on. I've said it before, I used to try to be methodical about this, but I find the more random I am with it, the more interesting the result is. So I just slop this in all the creases and crevices here, and then I'm just going to dab it all off with a paper towel, rub some in, and you know, it's just one of those things, you eyeball it, and I give it a quick once over, and I'm happy with that. So now let's take a look at how far we've taken all the pieces. That's the pants. Here's the shirt, which is also the shirt and the kilt now, and the shoes. And here's the final piece, modeled by my buddy Matthew Selton. This looks great. I'm very happy with this. Here's some close-ups. And the helmet back on. Just shooting the B-roll of this really inspired me. I feel like I'm gonna go ahead and make a short film with this character now. Now, remember, check out the video where I make the helmet. I'll have a link to that. You might also want to check out the link where I talk about my whole theory about the Sci-Fi kilt. You might find that interesting. And leave a comment. I love to read the comments. I hope you find that this stuff is helpful for you. Be sure to subscribe, sign up for the email newsletter, and remember, I'm just here to help make sci-fi. With trooper armor!